The occupier is supposed to administer the laws of the occupied state. It then went into the courts themselves, State of Hawaii Judiciary. And it said that the state of Hawaii shall not pillage, should not plunder private property. Now that word plunder, that's actually a war crime under the Geneva and Hague Conventions. So plunder and pillaging is the same. So his use of the word is telling. Then he also says that the state of Hawaii court should not enable or collude in the wrongful taking of lands. Enable and collude speaks to conspiracy, to pillage, to plunder. These are heavy stuff. Now what the courts were doing is that they're operating on statutes that were passed by the legislature or the counties or the courts themselves in decisions in making their own decision. And that's what caught the attention of Jennifer Ruggles, in that she could be complicit in plundering by enacting or participating in the enactment of legislation. And that's what prompted her to retain an attorney, and this attorney is an American as well. So this is not about Native Hawaiian stuff. Asking whether or not Corporation Counsel, which is the Attorney General level of a county government, to assure her that she has not incurred criminal liability. That's all it is. And that has opened up a can of worms, because whatever that Corporation Counsel writes could be incriminating for himself. And I'll give you an example, which was cited in the second letter by the attorney, Steve Laude, to Corporation Counsel Joe Kamehameha. The irony of this whole thing is Kamehameha is the Native Hawaiian. And you got two Americans citing the law. Now, in his letter, he brought up a case with regard to, this was in 2012, John Yu, Y-O-O. He was an assistant attorney general, and he was part of drafting the legal opinions or memos on torture. You guys remember that? With Iraq, torture memos, okay? So Abu Ghraib, folks remember Abu Ghraib, the prison in Iraq, and yeah, the military having these detainees in stress positions and everything. Okay, once that hit the news, what leaked out was these torture memos, meaning these guys were actually authorized to do what they did from a Justice Department memo. And that's what created the firestorm. Now, Germany, I believe it was Germany and Spain and Russia began to go after individuals who were doing the interrogation, which they called enhanced interrogation, not torture, they called it enhanced interrogation, which included waterboarding. They actually went after John Yu and the other CIA assets and others, military. If they ever came through their countries, they would be apprehended for war crimes. That's what started happening. And John Yu, who is a professor now at Cal Berkeley Law School, I don't think he travels anymore, because he can be apprehended and be prosecuted for war crimes, especially in 2014 when the US Senate House Committee on CIA interrogation released a report on torture, which admitted torture was done, called enhanced interrogation. And so Kamehameha, or the Corporation Counsel, whoever's there that's going to answer that question, if he says, which he stated in one sentence, which could be used against him, that you're not incurring criminal liability for legislating, that could be the John Yu memo of Hawaii. Because if the council members keep passing laws, that's incriminating. That's being complicit. So this is all stemming from the UN document, because what the UN document is something from the outside coming in. It's not coming from the inside out. That's the importance. Yeah. And
I'm sorry, if I may, it also mentioned about the mechanisms of the UN. Could you comment on that?
So in there, the UN independent expert makes reference that people in similar situations to Hawaii and Hawaii themselves, and now the thing is, he departed from his original position that was done in a 2013 report, which he cites in that memo. Because in that 2013 report, he thought that Hawaii, Native Hawaiians were indigenous people, and they have a right to self-determination to choose to be independent, right? Now, that letter of 2018 adjusted that. He's now referring to the Hague and Geneva Conventions. That's state of war instruments. That's not self-determination.
Real.
So the mechanisms that he said are accessible for people in Hawaii
That's
are
us.
those mechanisms that deal with human rights violations.
You.
And that you can now communicate and send complaints to these different mechanisms. The UN independent expert on this, the UN independent expert on that, the special rapporteur on that. Those are mechanisms that he's referring to. Yeah.
So much.
Other questions, comments? Don't be shy. Yes, Ruth?
My comment is, as I was listening today, I was realizing there's a new arising that's happening with the women and with men, but I really see the leadership of women saying no more. And I see that we're all kind of waking up to what Keanu has been saying and teaching us and kind of connecting the dots and making it go directly to something very personal to us, as I did with me, where it was my house. You know, so I think there's this awakening that's happening is as we're signing the Kuwait petition now with Claire Pana, you know, that we want to continue to stand. But I'm almost thinking it's like we want immediate restoration. You know, as we heard from Dr. Desaias's letter, when I read it, I don't understand why we're waiting. You know, it's like, what are we waiting for? And why do we need their approval and permission to be who we already are and to stand on what we already have? It's
right.
gonna be us saying no more. And, you know, what are we waiting for?
Can I?
Good
point.
You respond and then your comment after.
Because Ruth is going to bring up something that ties into the previous question that I didn't address. Okay, so let me clarify what the letter did, okay? Okay, the letter says that when you're under occupation, you're supposed to comply with the law of occupation. It's not about restoration. The kingdom already exists. It's a nation state in continuity. That's what that means. So you're not restoring what's already in continuity, right? It's understanding though that the country still exists, and these are the rules that apply when a country is occupied. The Hague and Geneva Conventions. Now he says you're supposed to do that. Well, what if you don't do it? That's why Amnesty International, in my PowerPoint, their definition of war crimes are violations of the Hague and Geneva Conventions. So Desaias does not get into what it is to violate the Hague and Geneva Convention. He says what you're supposed to do, and that's the key. So they have to administer the laws of the occupied state. That's the beginning. There's nothing here to restore. There's nothing here to reinstitute. It's really just knowledge of what's going on. Now, I wanted to bring up another point about protected persons, which is in the Geneva Convention. So the Geneva Convention has the term under Article 4, protected persons, who are protected under the Geneva Convention, okay? Now, protected persons are civilians that have rights, right? Similar to human rights in a state of peace, they have rights during a state of war. That's the Geneva Convention. And Article 147 has grave breaches of these rights, and it states what constitutes a grave breach: unfair trial, unlawful confinement, pillaging, blah, 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 right? Or unlawful confinement, okay. Now, under the Geneva Convention, Article 4, by definition, says that protected persons, meaning people that are protected under the Geneva Convention, are the citizens of foreign countries within occupied territory, except for Americans, meaning citizens of the occupier. That's Article 4. That's what it says, right? Now, that has since evolved, though, in 1999. In 1999, you folks remember the Yugoslavia breakup, former Yugoslavia breaking up? Okay, there was one guy who represented the Yugoslavian state. His name is Tadic, under Milosevic. And he was committing atrocities to Bosnian Serbs, okay? Well, Tadic was arrested in Germany for war crimes committed against Bosnian Serbs, Muslims, right? And other crimes against humanity and so forth. When he went on trial in 97, he went on trial in 1997, the judge said that the war crimes have to be dismissed against Tadic because the Bosnian Serbs were the same nationality as Tadic. Because that's when Bosnia-Herzegovina did not become an independent state yet. This is when they're still breaking up and they're fighting. It's a civil war. It went on appeal, and in 1999, the appeals chamber of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia stated that that definition is too stringent, Article 4. It has to be based on allegiance, not formal ties to the state by nationality, right? So it said that the issue is allegiance. So because the Bosnian Serbs held their allegiance to a breakaway entity, they were afforded rights as protected persons. And therefore, Tadic did commit war crimes that he can be prosecuted for. So the issue is allegiance. Allegiance, not formal citizenship of the occupier. Now you take that same development, which is what we call international criminal law, which expanded the definition of the Geneva Convention on protected persons, and you apply it to Hawaii. American citizens residing in Hawaii who are not employed by the federal government or the military are considered protected persons even though they're Americans. And the occupier is an American because their allegiance is not to the United States, but rather to the Hawaiian Kingdom. Now, where do you get the term allegiance in the Hawaiian Kingdom? It's in the Hawaiian Criminal Code. Chapter 6 of the Hawaiian Penal Code refers to treason. And it says, resident aliens residing in Hawaii, whether their country be at peace or at war with the Hawaiian Kingdom, owes allegiance to the Hawaiian Kingdom. That doesn't mean they're Hawaiian subjects, but they owe allegiance while they're in the kingdom. That's why an alien can commit treason in the Hawaiian Kingdom. It doesn't just apply to Hawaiian subjects. Just like if you're in America, you owe temporary allegiance if you're a resident alien there, and you could be capable of committing treason there. So what's important about this is that American citizens are not excluded from this situation, who find themselves in the same predicament as all of us. And that's what's important. So that's all part of the education. It's part of knowing what's going on and how to get the United States to comply with the law of occupation, which will inherently have mechanisms to bring the occupation to an end. That's part of the law of occupation.
You.
That's how it works, yeah. So I just want to clarify that point. Nothing to restore, we have, but what is a protected person, right? And what's nationality versus ethnicity, right?
Well, if we're in continuity.
The country is in continuity. Yeah.
Our country is in continuity. Let's take down the flags. Let's stop the American vote.
No,
Let's make our legislatures responsible for their votes. Let's show them if they know it's a war crime, according to the letter from Dr. DeZayas, then why isn't anybody else taking accountability besides Ruggles?
Spot on, exactly. See, now that is what we're supposed to be talking about. How do
Ew.
we bring compliance to the law of occupation?
Ew.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you.
Thank
I
you.
already know things are happening along that route. You know, there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes, but there are a lot of things that are coming up to the forefront.
So as an
Okay, so
average
we have
person,
a-
call
we
my
have a
one second.
question.
Call my one, just real quick, as an average
very quickly.
person, not like you or, Ruth, just a simple person, a working everyday person, how do we help with this movement that we're going through right now? How do we do this? Let's do this. This is the
Okay.
year for the huli. We want it now.
So the first thing that I would recommend, and I'm not promoting my book because I don't get paid for it, you got to pay the publisher. Go to Pu'a Foundation, puafoundation.org. That's the same book that Kamehameha School uses as a history book. Start off with that book and start reading over it because it's very, it's high school and entry level college, right? That has a lot of information there. What they have in the book is also a glossary. And I would recommend start educating yourself with information before saying I need to do something. That's the key. We gotta fill the gourd, yeah, the kavaiola. We need to fill it. And we need to fill it with information, not with rhetoric.
Well, I'm filled and I'm ready to do the
And then if you
action.
are, you are. Yeah,
Right.
I can speak for you.
You
Come
heard
on.
from you, and then.
Thank you.
And then from you, okay. You had a question or comment?
I'd like to take this one more step beyond, because we're all into the legal aspects of bringing back the nation. Let's just assume that we are a nation. Let us just assume that the United States of America is saying, oh yeah, we're gonna give up the asset here, and y'all can become a nation. So I'm thinking one day, what does that mean for me? Oh, that's right, that US dollar that I use, oh, we don't have that anymore. We don't have a currency. And that bank loan that I owe on my house, oh, that's right, the banking institutions don't exist here anymore, because those are American funded and they are capitalistic. And then, there's a big one here, how do I eat? You know, we all have Matson coming in with all these stevedores and all kinds of stuff, and that thing called the American dollar, and I'm going, wonder what we're gonna be paying with. What currency might that be? So the first thing that comes into my projected outlook is, what do we look like economically? What kind of currency do we have? What legislature? Because the one that we currently have is no more, doesn't exist in the way that we know or understand it, because that is a mechanism from the American government. So, before we go out there with our flags and say, hey, we're gonna change it, I suggest to you that there's a whole bunch of other folks out there, like a whole bunch of other Chinese and Japanese and part Hawaiian people that live here, not just 40,000 Hawaiians, but a whole other bunch of people that might have an opinion about this. And, oh yeah, you know that Social Security check? Ah, say goodbye to that. And you know, your
Not necessarily.
compensation, workers' compensation.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, so my point
Yeah.
is that, what does the
Yeah.
nation look like?
Okay, so if you're done, I'm gonna say there's at least 3 or 4 people here who can answer every single question and every comment that you've made so far. We'll start with Baron since he's in front of your face.
Okay, this is the Hawaiian thing.
US dollars
Gold and
exist.
silver.
We went to a foreign country and used US dollars. Currency exchanges work around the world. You can use yen anywhere, you can use dollars anywhere, so that's not the problem.
So this is my area, so I'm not kind of just giving my opinion on something. I'm international relations and public law, focusing on Hawaiian Kingdom law, U.S. Constitution, Hawaiian international law. Okay. Okay, so again, it's not getting our nation back. We gotta stop thinking like that. Aloha. So the sovereignty movement has been based upon chasing something. That's why it's called the sovereignty movement, moving toward sovereignty. It's not operating on sovereignty already here in a state called an independent state. That's why independence and sovereignty are synonymous, right? So if we are independent, then we're independent. And the legal system that applies because of that independence is the law, which then triggers the Hague and Geneva Conventions to administer the laws of the occupied state. That's how it works, right? That's how it works. So we have to keep saying we need to reinstate our country. No, we need to reinstate our understanding that the country still exists. And that's what, to use the term of desires, which I've been using constantly in my research because the law says it's called a state in continuity. Remember I even showed you what Judge Crawford said. You know, he's the International Court of Justice. It's the state that is not affected, so don't try to worry about the state. Now, the issue here then is, what is Hawaiian law? Don't assume that Hawaiian law is something that you don't know. So I can tell you, currency in the Hawaiian Kingdom, currency in the Hawaiian Kingdom was actually 3 types of currency. US gold, okay, US dollar, the British pound, and the Hawaiian dollar. It's in a civil code, that's what it is. Now the evolution of US currency will evolve with US dollar, just as it did. Okay, so that's taken care of. Now, those are the main things that we have to do is, and we have to keep thinking, like we get scared by saying, oh, we're gonna lose everything. As far as Social Security, no, that's a retirement. You put money in it, that's yours. I know people who are Filipino citizens who was in the National Guard still collecting Social Security. Right. So it's not an American thing. You put the money in, you get the money back. Now, whether or not the Social Security system is going to keep surviving, well, that's not the question. With regard, you're not entitled to it. Okay, that's an American problem in managing Social Security, right? But it's a retirement. That's a pension. So instead of trying to think of the doomsday event, right? We need to understand what it is first. Let me get to this idea that I'm still in a country, not that I'm the country, but I'm still in a country that my great-grandparents only knew. And then what is my role in this country under occupation? What does the Hague and Geneva Conventions mean to protected persons? You know what you do? Google protected persons during occupation. There's a lot of write-up on that kind of stuff. Google, how are civilians protected during occupation? You know, start surfing the web. They all say the same thing. And it's not like I'm trying to tell you what it is. That's all there. So what's important about desires, it's not that desires brought in the missing link. This stuff we've been doing since we returned from The Hague. This has been going on since 1995. Perfect Title was saying the same thing. I got actually quotes coming from newspapers from 1996 saying the same thing now. That Desai said with regard to land titles cannot be adjudicated unless it was done under Hawaiian Kingdom law. In fact, I got Rob Perez saying a quote from me, pretty much the same thing in 1996. But back then,